approve, we can approve, March 4th, right? Yeah.
Next week. What day is that?
Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Okay, we will go ahead and get started. I did put the microphones out just because it's been a little bit difficult to hear you all speaking through the live presentation. So just try to use those if you can. We'll go ahead and get started. We have two presenters tonight, and then we'll leave the remaining part of the meeting open for discussion. So I won't go through the whole mission statement and goal refresh and everything this time, but you guys are very familiar with those and our mission and our goals. So I'll just go ahead and introduce Todd Sweeney. He's going to present to us kind of just some overarching things about project feasibility, the overall process, timeline from beginning to end, and the steps that are included in a typical project. He has a lot of experience in the profession. Navigate Building Solutions, we've hired their company to help us with the sidewalk project. The sidewalk project was very complicated. There's a lot of steps, a lot of hoops to go through with MoDOT, so we hired Navigate to help us through that process because they are subject matter experts. So we just wanted Todd to present to you guys tonight a little bit about his experience, and most importantly, you can ask him questions that you may have regarding the project. And then after that, we'll have Joey McCliney with McCliney Company present. He's our financial advisor for the city of Odessa, and he's going to present some funding options through our public safety sales tax to you guys. So I will hand it over to Todd.
Hi, I'm Todd Sweeney, Navigate Building Solutions. I'm one of the founders of the company. We've been doing this, representing public agencies since 1999. As a subsidiary of a large company, from the Kansas City side, a similar company would be like an accounting board. We used to be a division of an outfit out of St. Louis that was a similar size. 2016, we took the road on our shore of the road and doing our own thing. So we were asked to quickly come through. We do represent public agencies throughout the state of Missouri, and we're asked to do a quick recap, take a look at everything that's taken place today, and try to put it in a single format with some agenda items that are shown on page 2 of your slide, which is introductions, pulling together project feasibility and the process moving forward. So I'm going to crack at that. Also be available to answer any questions you may have as associated with what might be the right design, construction, schedule, and budget associated with the contract. Because as owner representative, we're generally representing owners on something to do with the construction job. Whether it's a design phase, funding phase, build phase, it has to do with capital improvement. We're not IT project managers or assisting with any type of other activity. People always ask, man, before you start talking to me, let me know who you are. So again, Todd Sweeney, Navigate, we're an owner representative. So we're not the architect, we're not a builder, right? We come from that. I'm a licensed professional engineer. I worked for a contractor for 20 years building these types of facilities. We have a group of 40 advisors that help public agencies execute these kind of projects, helping on sidewalk projects and many other. What does an owner representative do? They help ensure public agencies have transparency that deals with competitive procurement and communications. We make sure there's accountability, so we do effective contracting, compliance, and documentation. And then lastly, we do predictability. We do estimating, scheduling, and so forth to ensure the outcomes are what you expect. So if you go for a referendum, that's what the price of the project's going to be. It won't be more. It's not going to go up. We're involved. We do work, you can see on the left-hand side of that third slide, we do work all over the state of Missouri. Last year, we represented 71 public agencies in Missouri. It's municipal, county, K-12, library districts, and some community college collegiate work. I've personally been involved with all 20 of these police facilities. We've done that since 2019. I got a renovation going up in Branson right now. We've got a new building in Nixa going up right now. We're renovating the Pleasant Hill Police Station right now. We just completed a renovation for St. Charles Police Station, and I could go on and go on. So we're very familiar with this project type, which is one of the reasons why Shauna, the mayor, and the gang have asked us to participate. Any questions on that before I move on? Okay, great. Pulling it all together. So what we've learned. So Odessa is a unique and proud community, strong support from Men in Blue. It's very noticeable, and I think your chief and Sean have picked up on the fact that what went out last time was too much of a lift for your community. They're looking at the half cent sales tax over 50 years is too much, and you're gonna hear from the financial consultant on other options to address that. Heard that 6.5 million is too much. It started off more than that. You guys are aware of that. But it's been dropping, and they think that they've got a plan now, Josh and his team, the chief does, to get it down to less than 4.9 million. It has to do with program cuts. Listening to what you guys have heard and what you guys have told them, they got some suggestions on that. I can tell you for where they're at right now, square foot wise, you can't do it for 4.9 million, then everybody involved in the job should be shot. Quite frankly, it's a doable budget. It's realistic. We put it through a competitive bid process, right? You'll get good numbers, and hopefully you can get some savings and not, make sure you're comfortable, or spend it for either increases or improvements to the facility, or put it back in the community's pocket. 15,000 gross square foot doesn't work for 4.9, but a 6,000 net square foot building that grows up to 8 does. Okay, community personality and values, there should have been a slash in values. It's very obvious. The only reason why I'm so confident in that budget is because you want functional over award winning. I get it. I work with all kinds of communities. I've done firehouses that are pre-engineered metal buildings, and I've done firehouses that are brick on all 4 sides because it's mandated by the community that they're building in. And I can tell you, when somebody tells you you can do a job for nothing, generally they're right. You can. So you'll hear or you'll read articles about some police station that was built for $200 a square foot. Then you'll see another article where it's built for 400. And you say, well, that community got gigged. They got taken advantage of. That's not the case. You can do, I usually use firehouses as an example, because it's easy. I can show you 3 different pictures of firehouses I've managed. All 3 of them are 2-bay firehouses. Okay? All 3 of them are 2-bay firehouses. So one's built for $350 a square foot, one's at $180. This all is actual math. One's Washington Community Fire Protection District, 2-bay firehouse, but it was a voluntary station. Didn't have beds in it. It didn't have housing. Okay, well, that's an obvious difference. You can put your arms around that. Nobody tells you that. You got a nice, pretty picture of a 2-bay firehouse. You don't realize it's missing a major programming component. Next thing is we did it out. It was a pre-engineered metal building. $850,000 fire station, $180 a square foot. It was pre-engineered metal building. I take that and I drop it in St. Charles City. It can't be built. By their own codes, they've got to have 4 sides of brick on all 4 sides of any public building. So when you just take the pictures, if I showed them to you, you'd be like, oh, I get it. But nobody tells you that. So what I'm telling you is that your budget, you're going to have a really nice police station, but it's probably not going to be brick on 4 sides, nor do you need it in your community, nor do you want it on your community. So as we walk through that, I'll show you that. So first, let's go back to square foot. Reducing building size, I think your chief is focused on predominantly what's important to have a police station only, and he's removed everything else. Courts, EOC, fitness, animal control, there's other X's on here, there's other things I could have made your list even longer, but those are the 3 big areas. But the next slide shows you areas he's willing to forego and feels like, hey, these would be nice. I think they would be functional, and I think they have a purpose. But if I've got to reduce some things, these are what I would reduce. The next slide is not only does it happen on the inside of a building, it happens on the outside. So you start taking an architect's design. Yeah, folks, about 2 months ago, they came in here, Wilson S's, I call them Wilson S's, that's not their name anymore. They're police architects. And James, I've known him for 20 years, he's a really good architect, right? He is going to design what he's told to design. He's going to make it to the best in class until somebody reins him back. We're here to rein him back, right? Not that he's gonna do anything wrong, he's gonna do exactly what he thinks that you want. But unless we put some dollars to every decision that's presented to Shauna and the chief, then, sorry. Overlooking, then we're not, I thought you wanted the chicken, sorry.
I did.
Then you're not gonna have better values. That's what we're here to do. The next slide shows you project feasibility. I just said look and function, right? Simple. Boy, I should have had my assistance groups spell check this. That should be simple facade, not simply facade. Simplify facade. But you can see the price point that Wilson was describing to you a couple months ago is really based upon a facade that was more similar to what we did for Baldwin, which is on the far right-hand side. We just completed that a year ago, or the Nixon police station we're doing right now. It is a nice looking facade. It's got a very strong presence. I think in all reality, your community, based on what we're hearing and what I'm being told by Sean and Nixon, you guys want functional over award winning, might look something like the ones on the bottom. You know, the one on the bottom is Poplar Bluff. It was built 2 years ago. It looks dang nice, right? It's simple. It's 1 story. They didn't do 2. Stay out of 2 stories when it comes to police if you can help it. It's a one-story building, it's simple, it's clean, and it looks just fine. And the one on the right, quite frankly, they had a budget to meet. You know, that's the first time I've ever done a police station on our board. And I'm not recommending it, but when you gotta meet a budget, you gotta do what you gotta do. And I'm telling you, we can help you meet what budgets you need. And if that's the look you want, that's not a bad looking building, quite frankly. And that police department is extremely happy with that building. Right? It's got all the program they want. So what we can do is we can start massaging that as your quarterback, as your own representative to get you where you need to be. Okay? It doesn't have to be as bleak as the picture the architect showed you. That's not in color or anything else. They kind of downplayed that a little bit when you saw the facade. But again, they're wonderful at what they do. We're just going to help direct them towards the best value. The next thing that's been discussed, and the chief asked me to talk about this, is renovation versus new. You can do it. You do a renovation. I have studied so many buildings for the purpose of doing a renovation. I was called into Poplar Bluff for that reason, because city council had a building, a medical building they were going to buy. Right? It's really hard to put up all the public agency facilities you could put in an existing building. Public Works, you got a pre-engineered metal building with a lot of site, you can use it. It's an easy bit. I tell you, do it all day long. City Hall, do it all day long. Right? Animal shelter, sure. You know, it's what goes on the inside. We have to clean it up a little bit, put some cages in, we can make it work. Police is the tough one, because there's codes out there in the IBC, International Building Codes, that all your architects are going to design to. And it says it has to be an essential facility, that and fire. Has to stand when everything else fails, right? If a tornado hits it, it's got to stand, right? Because you want to be able to do that and administer that service to your public in the event of that. It's fire stations, hospitals, and police stations are the big ones that most communities think of. Because of that, we got to harden a facility, and I can give you all kinds of examples. Down in Cape Girardeau, they bought an armory, paid for it, bought an armory. So this is the stoutest building we got down here. They ended up, after doing the cost analysis, demolishing it to grade and building a new building. Why? Because an armory is made and built out of masonry, right? It's a big, strong building. The problem with old armories, they don't have any rebar in the core. So if an earthquake hits it, it's just going to crumble. It's going to come down, right? Nobody thought about that. That armory, man, it's stout. You know, the military, it's spent a lot of money and it ended up going away, quite frankly. The same thing happens with most building types. It's hard to harden. It's expensive to harden them, and it all comes down to the structural cost. The structural engineer is the one that drives that every single time. Branson, we're building it right now. We bought a theater. They bought a theater before us. They came in and said, we got to harden this thing. The architect said, first of all, they took EOC out. If you take the dispatch out, and most of the dispatch, if you take dispatch out, some architects will start looking at the code a little lenient. They'll say, well, you know, I mean, at St. Louis County, for example, we looked at a renovation. They have multiple precincts. They made the argument, got the architect to buy into it, that if one precinct goes down, I can still administer the services through another precinct. So it started to make sense. You know, they can make a code argument and get by. If you're the only police station in the community, that won't work. It just won't work. Branson ended up having to write a letter to the architect saying, we're okay with it not being an essential facility. Otherwise, those engineers and architects wouldn't have taken and stripped it of the hardening that was in it. Yes.
That ransom facility, isn't it kind of a dual purpose facility with fire admin in it as well?
It was, they stripped that out too.
Okay.
Yeah, it's police just now, but the third floor was gonna be fire. You're absolutely right. Yeah. It was tough, and we went at round and round on that one. The problem is you get this big, beautiful theater, you're like, we can do all kinds of stuff with it, but you can't because of that silly code. It just trips you up, guys. I just don't want you to think you can go out and buy a building. I'll look at any building you want, I'll do it at the cost analysis, and I'll give you the real numbers. I can real quickly walk through a building, I've done so many of them, to be honest with you, I can tell you. You know, are you gonna put in cells? I asked chiefs, and we're gonna, you know, are you gonna do this? Are you gonna 911? But we had one situation where we shopped all over town we even tried to go directly to the engineer and say, can't we find a structural engineer that will agree with our logic, that this doesn't have to be hardened? We couldn't pull it off, nobody would touch it. The engineers just won't stamp the drawings. And you as community liaisons aren't gonna do a building and say it's not per code. I mean, that would be difficult to do. So I'm not against renovating the building. I'm telling you, I've tried for St. Charles, Glendale, Poplar Bluff, Cape Girardeau, Branson, I've looked at a lot of darn buildings for renovation, and by the time we add in the steel, it's just harder to build it up than to build it from scratch. In your situation where you actually own the land and it's a flat parcel, I'm not selling it on you guys. I'll look at anything you want. I'll give you the numbers. But don't go down that path without knowing that's a huge hurdle to jump. When you're looking at existing buildings, you might find an old fire station that's already been hardened. You might go, here, Todd, I'll prove you wrong. I'm game. I'll look at it. I'll price it. I'll put the numbers together for you. But that is a hurdle. I've not seen it work. And I've tried lots of times. A lot of communities look at existing buildings. 2 of them bought before they knew the answer. Cape Girardeau and Poplar Bluff, and they both ended up. They raised the building in Cape Girardeau, Poplar Bluff. They ended up selling it. It was a 4-3 council vote. These guys got it bought. These 3 said, what's going on? They brought an outsider. We came out of St. Louis. We looked at it. They said, won't you guys accept this and do it? We said, we can't. We'll shop it around. We looked around, and yeah, it was just a bad buy. Just a bad buy. So anyway, enough said on that. Any questions on that? I'm happy to answer.
I do have a question. In our last meeting, one of our committee members mentioned 3D printing.
Yeah.
I was looking at some of the videos, it looks really pretty fascinating.
It does, doesn't it?
But from what I understand, does that not meet Missouri building codes?
I love you asking that. We actually, St. Charles Community College got a grant from the state. And they wanted to be the first one in the state of Missouri to build a 3D printed building. It was going to be a consortium. It was where they teach it's a small building, but it's going to teach, we don't care. They want to do a 3D building.
Right.
Like Task Navigate, this is our client, study it, go after it. There was 2 firms that were actually pushing they could build it. One was out of Texas, none of them were Missouri based.
Right.
And none of them can meet code. None of them have adopted design that can meet code in any capacity. And it really, quite frankly, is a shame because what it means is code agencies haven't studied enough to validate it, right? So what is happening though is residential's coming out first. So they've got some states that have approved it for residential construction, which is pretty exciting. And that will follow quickly. I will tell you, I'm on board anytime we're looking at something new. We did the first ICF building project in Missouri for a public agency. That's insulated concrete forms. You can do some pretty cool stuff with that, and it doesn't have to be expensive, right? That's a whole new technology that we've mastered. That's an option, especially for hardened facilities. They take the I don't know if you know what that is, but they take I'll say you know what that is. Not a lot of people do that. We do it all the time. I've got 4 different gymnasiums for schools going up with that because the gymnasium as a box made sense financially. If you start compartmentalizing it, it can get ugly. It can get too expensive too quick, and you got to have the right resources in town to do it because there's not a lot of contractors that have. So it's anything like that. Net zero, we did the first net zero building in the state of Missouri for a public agency. We're willing to explore any of those things, and I love the fact that you're bringing up 3D printing. I would so like to be the first one to do it in town.
Yeah.
I'm not. You won't get it done for you won't. It's not there yet.
Okay.
I wish it was.
Right.
President of St. Charles Community College pushed us to our limit to figure that out for it. She really did, and eventually they had fun. I'll give you all the data though. Right. Companies, who we went, factories we visited. Pretty cool.
Well, the ICF sounds pretty interesting too. That might be a good option.
It's not a bad one. I mean, it really isn't. Depends, especially with this small of a building, and we might be able to really economize that if we can keep it one story. And there's just lots of options on that. Probably the really thing I need to do, we knew there's an ICF factory down in southwest Missouri, so it worked. And we had contractors out of the St. Louis area. I need to study this demographic right here and see if anybody's done that. We can get the right bidders because we can't pull people in. It's no different when tilt-up started coming out at first. People either did it or they didn't. If you didn't have contractors that were doing tilt-up, this was 20 years ago, then it was a problem. Same thing with every new technology. You just got to make sure. Drury Hotels was doing a product, the ICF product. We were the first one in Missouri really to do it, and they built 2 in St. Louis. So when we did our first school out of St. Louis, we had it. We had contractors that could bid on it. Because if you don't have competition, you're going to blow up your budget regardless. So I need to make sure you got contractors doing it over here on the Kansas City side. We got offices in both, over in the park and in St. Louis. I've just not done ICS in Kansas City yet. So I need to make sure that you're going to get better. Box block out of Arkansas is generally the supplier. Anyway, good question. Any others? That's why you asked me to come, so we can bet any of these.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What is the average size, talking about the ICF panels, what is the average size of those?
Well, they come in actually, they're actually come in blocks, so they're almost like a CMU block looking thing that's foam. And you stack them up,
Okay.
you place your rebar, and then you pour concrete in it, so, yeah, you can make it any size you want. If you want to Google it, Google Fox block, Fox block, and they've got some really good tutorials on it, just kind of explain the product. Not sold on it, but I'd love to explore it with you. We'll do cost both ways. That and then simple standard construction, we'll do CMU construction versus light gauge metal stud versus hardening, you're gonna need a concrete lid, so that tends to push it to CMU. Reinforced CMU. Okay, cool. Project feasibility moving forward, select design team, hold them accountable to design and budget. We'll be part of that. Conduct community outreach to encourage local supplier and vendors to participate. I think that's a big deal. If you're taking tax dollars out of your community, you ought to put it back in the local suppliers and contractors that are available. That means letting them know how they can bid the work. Because everything in our world, everything needs to be competitively bid. That's what it says on the bottom. Transparency is the trust currency. Number one thing you can do to ensure transparency is not just to hand the job to a general contractor, make them bid it. I believe that with my heart. That's part of who we are. So that's what we would suggest. Competitively bid all work per Missouri state statute, and then contract smart, document project, and hold parties accountable. That means good contracting. We've had great experience with the city so far in trying to establish good, solid contracts that allow you, and that are owner favorable, not contractor favorable. So that's important. So again, I want to thank the chief and Sean for letting me be here today. We got a process moving forward, which is to set the new project total, scope of work, confirm supporting sales tax requirements, which I think you're going to hear a little bit about in a minute, and then establish a community engagement plan for future referendum. You can do this thing in November, April, or you're not going to do it at all. And then there's all choices you got to make. I can assure you, if this thing goes to the market and this thing gets approved by your community, you will look every single one of the people in the eyes. I told you what it's going to cost. Told you what it was going to be. It's going to land the plane at that point, and I can show you the receipts. That's why, quite frankly, my business is just blown up. People are eager for that. They want it, and they're willing to pay a point and a half for me to join the team and do it. Right? I usually save it in the architectural negotiation alone, let alone a dozen other ways. Our return on investment is pretty good. So that's my only sales pitch. I think we've got the city's heart and soul behind us now for what we did on the street. But I want you guys to hear that as well. Any questions? Awesome, thank you. You're on, big guy.
Sorry for that. No, you're good. You leave, you were there.
Yeah, if anyone wants shaking fingers, there's some of those in the back now.
Delivery guy brought him.
Delivery guy.
So my name is Joey McClaney. I work for you guys. I'm your municipal advisor. I handle the debt for the city. I've worked for the city for, I think, a decade, maybe 2 decades. My hair was darker when I started.
Sorry, they already have them.
Oh, good.
That was Josh's doing. He's good at that.
He's an overthinker.
You guys ready for me? Basically, I do the numbers, and after listening to the presentation, I'm really glad I don't do any construction or building of any type. I'm given numbers, and you asked me how to produce X amount of dollars. And so what you have in front of you is our schedules, and you have 3 choices: a 1/2-cent sales tax, a 3/8 cent sales tax, or a 1/4 sales tax. USDA will allow you to go out 40 years, and typically they're 38 years. We don't have to make the decision on whether we're going 30 years USDA or 40 years with USDA. You can go to the general market. I didn't check Sean and I were talking about the interest rates, and they said they were 5%. That's, to me, that's too much. I think you can go to the market, do a 30-year for under 5%. Maybe at the time of issuance, when they move forward on the borrowing, maybe it'll be at 5%, and we'll end up moving towards USDA. The difference between USDA and not going USDA, one, at this point, if they're 5%, I think we can do better. But again, we don't have to make that decision today. What I think is more important is that not going with USDA, you can use growth. The USDA will not allow you to do a growth projection. And it doesn't matter whether you're Overland Park, Kansas, growing at 6% a year, or Odessa, which has consistently grown in excess of 2% a year, except last year. And I'm pleased with that because someone had argued with us that our growth projections were too conservative at 2%. And I said, 2% is fine. Maybe it's too conservative. And they were saying, well, you'll get 3% inflation growth. Well, last year we got inflation, but we didn't get any growth in our assessed valuation. I have seen across the state that the sales tax has in fact plateaued. You would think with inflation that you would get a 3 or 4% increase every year that you have 3 or 4% increase in prices. However, people tend to buy less when things cost more. And Saline County, we did a sales tax bond for them similar to this. And when COVID hit, I almost had a heart attack because I thought, oh, sales tax is going to 0. Well, it jumped because everybody stayed home and bought at home. It was the best thing that ever happened to rural America. It's the worst thing that happened to cities, major cities. But even their sales taxes, it went up in 20, 21, 22. Last year, it's leveled off. So again, I don't like projecting growth, but in this situation, you guys have been consistently above that for a long time. It also lets you do a bit of a larger project. So looking at the examples that I have in front of you, you had 2 or 3. I saw 3 pages.
Should be 2.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I handed out extras.
Yeah, no, I was like, oh, looks like I'm wrong again. And by the way, I thought I'd be answering questions. I didn't know I had a presentation tonight until about an hour ago. I said, you guys still have a meeting? Oh, yeah, you start in 20 minutes. So if you look at the sheet that has, it starts with 340,000 and then it goes to 255, 170, and 5%. That's USDA. And that's just a simple schedule because USDA doesn't let us grow that 170, which would be a 1/4 cent sales tax, or 3/8, which is, again, 20, 30, and 40 years, you got a 3/8 and a 1/4. We don't have a half down there because the half didn't pass. Now, we can do a larger project if you have a 1/2 cent sales tax. But again, you guys have to tell me. If you want a 1/2 cent sales tax, you could get your project up to about 5 million. If not higher. So again, that's your decision, but I don't like going back to the public after they've turned it down. So 1/4 and 3/8. So looking at the first blue box, a 1/4 cent going out 40 years, where your payments have to be at $170,000. And I say it has to be at $170,000. I want to take a step back. USDA will lend to you, and you're going to have trouble getting them to lend to you if you say, we're going to pay more, we don't know where the funds are going to come from. So, for example, I can look at my growth schedule and know, given just a little bit of growth, that the money's going to be there. But USDA is going to say, show me the money where it's going to be starting now. And I would like to say it was because they have this, they're still using spreadsheets and they don't know how to use growth in their spreadsheets. I've seen all of their schedules. It's obscene. You hear about it on the news now with Trump and the inefficiencies in government. This is one of them. So if you were to go with the smallest sales tax, a 1/4 cent sales tax, and you could go with an 8, but I wouldn't suggest it. And went out 40 years, your project is $2,850,000. You could build that much. Dropping down to 3/8, you would go 40 years. Your project could be 4.25 million. Your payments would be 255,000, which in this day and age is a small project. Now, if we simply go over to the growth schedules, you'll notice that you go from a 20-year with starting at 170,000, using 5% interest, which I do believe is too high. I believe we'd be closer to 4.5 in today. Using 170,000 over 20 years and growing it, you could do 2.5 million. So that gives you $500,000 more at the same interest rate and not having to go through USDA programs. Going 30 years, and I don't want to go much past 30 years, we probably could. Is the building going to last 30 years? It makes it more, the 5% probably get it done, but 30 years is probably the maximum I want to go to the general market for. The federal government wants to take it, okay, I'll let them take it. They make bad decisions all the time. So a 30-year project with a quarter cent will bring in, over 30 years, allow you to do a project of about 3,280,000. Dropping it down to 3/8, we start at 255,000. We grow it at 2% a year. Your project all of a sudden goes from 3,280,000 to 4 million now. And that just is more compounding of that 2% over the time. What happens when you have a year like last year and all of a sudden you don't grow 2%? Hopefully you'll have a couple years where you grow 5, and then a year you'll grow none. But what happens is you have to start looking for other pockets to pull that out of. Or the police get a radar gun. There was a town in southern Kansas, and I did a water revenue bond for them. Has nothing to do with anything to do with the police department. On the same night, they approved a radar gun. A year later, they called and said, "Can we pay off the water bond?" And I was like, "Where did you get the money? You had no money." They go, "The radar gun." I was like, "Okay, it's good money."
It's a lot.
That's really all I've got for you. Tonight, you need to decide. I would suggest what you really need to decide is either the quarter or the 3/8, because that gives you an idea of the project size. So you're talking with growth somewhere between 3.2, 3.3, and 4.9, not going to USDA. And it shrinks obviously to 4.2 if you go to USDA without growth. But you can look at both. You can, and that's your job. So I'm not, if I'm wrong, just tell me. Good. You can pick and choose different components. You can get a general idea, go to the voters with a very general idea, and say, we're going to do the best we can and do the biggest we can with the money we can. And, have a base unit that you can get done. And then for example, if interest rates go down, you can do more. The market moves down faster than the federal government's interest rates. The beauty of the federal government and having the USDA giving us a nod saying this is going to work is that the USDA will lock in interest rates even if they go higher. So we get the best of both worlds. Yes, sir.
For me, just for clarification, if we go to the open market, they'll take future growth into consideration. So compared to USDA, you can't consider future growth at all.
Correct. And looking back, and I do look back the last 10 years, you've been growing very nicely over the last 10 years. And so a bond buyer will go and look and say, okay, they're using 2%. That's pretty reasonable since they've been growing at pretty much 3+%. But if the sales tax were to stall, if we would hit a recession, then you'd have to reach into another pocket. And that happens all the time. It is far more comfortable to project 2%, thinking that 3% is easy, and has been easy, than it is to project 3% and see 2% for the next 5 years. Sure.
So you're talking about ways to borrow money, if I'm correct.
Yes,
And you could borrow from a local bank, but those rates, they usually charge you the most.
absolutely.
You can do a bond or certificate of participation, which is what I think you're saying
Perfect, yep,
is
that's
the
exactly
market.
right.
They're just the ways you're gonna borrow money. The last way is you can borrow money from,
USDA, and it is also a certificate of participation.
got it. Fundamentally, what's the percentage difference between USDA and certificates of participation? It's market value.
So.
Quarter
right-
point, half a point?
So the USDA, they change every quarter.
Do they?
So, and the market changes every minute. And so right now, I would say a 30-year general market bond would probably be closer to 4.75, but the USDA is quoting 5%.
So it's about a quarter point difference.
Right, but I did a jail for Lynn County, Kansas, and USDA was 4.5, and we got them done at 3.
So why would you ever do a USDA if it's costing you more to borrow from them?
It
And
doesn't always, because
Right,
when
it
we
doesn't always.
originally went to USDA, they were significantly
They were
lower.
3
That was
1/4.
our attraction to.
they were less than what the market.
Yeah,
Okay,
and normally they are less than the market.
got it. Okay,
Um,
I honestly didn't know, so I
Right,
wanted to
so
ask the
they
question.
swing both ways, and they're typically on a utility revenue bond, they're about at market, but then they say, okay, you can go 40 years. And I don't like going 40 years because things don't last 40 years, even PVC, believe it or not.
So I've heard, I don't know if it's right, and you can tell me if it is, that you go USDA generally because you want a longer term that you can't
That's
get.
exactly right.
You can go 40 years instead of 30.
That's exactly right.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you
no,
for reaffirming.
And I'm working on you with Pleasant Hill, by the way.
Perfect. So then the question becomes, how do they know, how would I know if I was in their shoes, which one to pick?
They don't have to pick until they're voted. I mean, until they pass it. So the beauty is we go down both paths until we have to, and then we can look and say, where's the cheapest money?
Fair enough.
So this committee, that's a good point. This committee doesn't have to choose USDA or not USDA, but we have to get an understanding. It's like we're kind of working backwards at this point, where we want to determine like project size and square footage, and then see what tax is palatable to the community and what would fit our project size. So we're kind of working backwards in a way, or forward, however you, it's chicken or egg, I guess. I don't know, but.
You have the money to pay, you build the building, so
Mm-hmm.
can't do anything about that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. It's, for example, the 4,000,009 building, you think, okay, that's gonna take 3/8. It's gonna throw off the first 255,000. Do we want to go to the public and say, we're gonna get it done, we're gonna do, we're asking for a 3/8 so we can do this building that we're hoping will be 4.9 million. If interest rates drop, you can do a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger building. If interest rates rise, you might have to cut something out, or we might, because that's 30 years, or we might think, let's go to USDA and try to work that, add 10 more years, even though the 30 years gets you a bigger project using 2% growth. But we don't have to make the decision on where we go for the money. You do have to make the decision, what kind of costs do you want to spend and what sales tax.
One thing to talk about with the growth component, with USDA, so for example, with the 3/8 sales tax, so our payment schedule will start at 255,000 and it will stay 255,000, but our sales tax will continue to increase. So from year 1 to year 20 or 40, it will continuously be 255,000. That will be our payment. So there'll be a gap, if you will. With the growth rate assumed, your payment schedule's increasing at an assumed rate of what your sales tax is increasing, which is good for the financial side of it. But what Joey was saying was like, if there is a year that your sales tax doesn't hit 2% or a year that it hit 6%, you have to keep that money obligated so you can make those payments back and not have to go to the radar gun, basically. That's totally hypothetical. We would never, ever, 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 ever do that. But
We can.
yeah, they got in trouble.
I want a copy of the newspaper.
But what we're meaning is having to seek additional funding sources to make the payments, and we wouldn't. We also, it being a dedicated sales tax, this money has to go into its own fund and can only be spent on X, Y, and Z. So that's one good thing about the growth rate too. You keep that money in there when you have your excess years, and then when you have your low years, you have a reserve to be able to make those payments.
In the Kansas City area, what's the percentage breakdown between the loan types you see in public bodies?
Most go public bodies.
Like most go USDA or?
No, most go general market.
Okay, I didn't want to speak out of turn. I agree with that 100% with what I've seen with my public clients. Most go general market.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You guys have any questions for Joey?
I have a question, but I don't know if it's really a question. You know, we've talked a lot about like the new builds and everything coming in. How do we, I know we're being conservative at the 2%, but how do we kind of leverage the new builds with that 2%? Is that the 2% that's with the new?
No, because you've got a ton of new construction. That'll go into the assessed value. More beds means more purchases. You're right. What you can think is, I mean, I could use any growth rate you want. I just don't want to get anybody into a bind.
Oh, yeah, no.
And so, you know, I could use 3% and we can, all of a sudden, you're at a $5.5 million building. But it makes me uncomfortable. If you guys are comfortable, you'll not remember it, and I'll be standing up here explaining why you're out of money. That's typically what happens. I will tell you that, for example, if you went to a US, again, you don't have to do this, and we said, hey, we want to do 4.9 million, they're going to say, well, your payment is going to be 300,000, not 255,000. Show me where the extra 50,000 comes from. And that's, and I can typically make an argument with them that they'll accept, but if the interest rate isn't better, we don't need to.
Is this helpful to see this information?
Yeah.
Okay. Questions? Okay.
Shauna has my mobile number, so if you guys get, I only get good questions typically in the shower, so. So if you have questions, please call her or hit my cell phone, ask me. I can run numbers all day long. I don't play golf, it's what I like to do, so it's easy for me. So please do not hesitate to ask. If it's about construction, I'm useless. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joey. James? I will just hand it over to James. The rest of the meeting will be open to discussion for you guys, so. And feel free to get food.
Chicken.
If you didn't know, there's food back there. I was gonna start just by kind of recapping what we did last meeting, but while we're fresh on the sales tax percents and all that, here, let's just go ahead and talk about that to start off with. I really liked what we heard there. What's popping in my head, and tell me what your guys' thoughts are on this. My thought is we make the recommendation for a 3/8 sales tax, not to exceed 30 years, and give them the option of doing maybe a 25 or even 20. I don't think 20 will do it, but potentially 25 years, but not to exceed 30. So.
I like the 25.
Yeah.
But I can go either way, yeah.
Yeah. So I've seen some numbers there. I don't remember what the big difference was. But 25 I thought was pretty good. And the 30 I was okay with too.
Yeah.
So
I know, like, whenever they were talking about the USDA loan, I know a lot of people I talked to were like, I don't know if I'm gonna be alive in 40 years,
Right.
so, how are we making the decision that we're gonna leave for somebody else to have to deal with later on?
Right.
Yeah, I think that the 3/8 is probably the better option in that, and, I know we're still talking about just getting funding, but I know, like, when we talked to the chief, one of the funding options that they were talking about were grants, things like that, public assistance grants. And you can't do that without having a committed dollar amount. So I mean, once we get to that, having a dollar amount, then we can add on whatever we can do later and then possibly even pay off early.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things that I see from my side, because I do a lot of grants for my department, is you can get a lot of grants to help with the interior, all the what I call the fun stuff.
Yeah.
From camera systems to gym equipment to radar guns and all that stuff. So I think there's ways to also help offset that. Once we have everything kind of in place, then we can go and look for additional resources as well. So, all right. Are you guys good with that?
Yeah, so the grant he was talking about for the building, Josh did write one, only we didn't get our rejection notice until it was voted down. So we have no idea whether or not we would have got it or not. We just didn't get the rejection notice until once they saw we didn't have a funding source, we were no longer qualified for it. So
That wasn't USDA, was it?
No,
no,
Yeah.
I don't remember who it was with.
Yeah.
I
I can't remember.
can't remember all the ones he writes. That one I'm not sure.
I heard, and I know Josh told us at one of the first or second meetings we had, but once it was voted down, we were told no. So it is what it is. So, all right, we're making progress, right? So I'll kind of move on to recapping our last meeting for those that weren't here. We kind of went through the original big schematic that we had to kind of somewhat decide or determine what we wanted, what we didn't want. And I took those ideas and I kind of did my own little map. I'll hand this around. My highlighted yellow areas is what we really kind of decided to cut out. So I'll hand that around a little bit. We got two for you guys to take a look at.
So you reconfigured that,
Based on what we talked about.
Yeah. So that's not necessarily what the design's gonna be, it's just taking away those spaces. One thing that I did want to kind of go back to is the wellness center, the fitness center. At our last meeting, there was a lot of talk of, we'll just buy them a gym membership and call it good. And I want to give you guys a couple real world examples of why that's not necessarily a good idea. So this last weekend, I shared this with the Board of Aldermen last night. This last weekend in the town just west of here, at 3:08 in the morning or whatever it was, there's a 15-person disturbance at this restaurant. The person that got arrested, I believe, was an Odessa resident. One of the people who was contributing to this disturbance was the person's spouse. As he got transported to jail, the spouse ended up going, waiting for him to bond out and all that. She creates a disturbance at the jail. As soon as he gets released, she gets arrested because of the disturbance that she creates. Now, my question on that is you've got those folks who don't like cops, who are creating an issue. We live in a small town. Let's say they work out at the same gym that we get their membership to. Do you want our officers going and working out with those folks, creating a safety issue for the officers when these people start going off on them as cops? So the other example that I have, about 10 years ago, where I used to work at, I arrested a guy. I was the first one to arrest him as he came back to the community. The guy was literally he would spend 8 hours a day just pumping weights. He'd go to the gym, 8 hours just lifting weights. I arrested him for public peace disturbance and alcohol. Throughout the course of the next year, he was arrested multiple times. At the end of that year, he ended up killing his mom, stabbing his mom multiple times. So with one gym option here, do you want our officers working out with that guy? It's a safety issue. So with those two examples, I really think we need to reconsider including a little bit of a wellness space. I think we can get grant money to supply the equipment, but I think we need to include that space. So, do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I don't think people will buy it. I mean, your examples are great, but, and they're realistic and it'd be great, but when it comes down to it, you've got to cut things. And
Well-
when I tell people about this, and you mentioned, you know, a wellness center, a gym, physical fitness, they're like, I don't have that where I work.
And I get that, but people aren't doing the same job as we are.
Oh, I agree.
So,
But you're talking about getting people to vote for something.
and I understand that. I'm just asking for that little bit of space. And where I'm coming at it, it's a safety thing for our officers. So, I mean, do we want to tell our officers we don't care about their safety?
Do you want to tell your officers that our officers that we're not going to have a building?
So we're
I
gonna
mean-
have a
That may be
building.
what it comes
No.
down to.
Wait, you said we're going to have a building?
That's our plan, yeah.
Well, yeah, but we've got to get people to vote for it.
You're right.
Okay, well, I don't think we're talking about the same thing then.
Well, we are. We're just asking to
No,
have the space.
Well, yeah, but I mean, this is something that's important to you and I understand, and it would be great. It would, I mean, the facility that they put forth the very first time, that's what we should have,
Right,
okay? But we can't, number one, we can't afford it,
right,
okay? I mean, you were at the Board of Alderman meeting last night, you listened to what they've got to deal with. I
right,
mean, the city can't afford this stuff right now.
right.
So to propose something that we know is gonna fail again, seems like we're not doing our job in this group right here.
So we are doing our job in that we're cutting costs, are we not?
Yeah.
We've reduced that sales tax, have we not?
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
That's what we'll present.
And that's what we're trying to do, so.
I think a lot of it, I mean, to an extent, we're gonna have a list of necessities that have to be in the building, and then we're gonna have a list of maybes, and those can be prioritized.
Right.
But it's gonna come down to, can we do the 5%? Do we go USDA? Do we not? Just like what Joey was saying, it's gonna be kind of a last minute decision on if the project's a $4 million project or a $4.2 million project. And that's gonna determine if we can have a wellness space in it or not
Right.
at the end of the day. So,
I think before we really get too much into the argument over whether we can have this or not, I think we really need to have them redesign the space with the budget that we're projecting to see what can actually fit into this smaller budget. Because we can say all day long, we want them to have a fitness center, we don't. We really can't say until we know what we can afford.
yeah.
Right.
And so, I mean, we've cut out a lot from that building, and I think we've put down really the necessities of what we need. And we can get something done with those necessities. Anything, I mean, if something comes along, whenever we finally get this project going, and we do have a little bit of extra somewhere, that one of those maybes, we can say, yeah, hey, we can fit that in there, and we're not going to go over our project costs. That's great. But I think we've got it down now to our necessities. And I mean, if we can get it passed with our necessities, and that's what we're going for, I think that would be great. I mean, if we don't get it, you don't get it, and we move on. We're fine with that.
Yeah.
So.
And officer wellness and safety would obviously be, a higher item on the maybe list.
Right.
Yeah,
on the priority.
And that makes sense, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just don't, I think, I mean, and you have a passion for it, and I get it, okay? I 100% understand what you're talking about. You see these things, and I'm with you.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest issue here is, what can we get people to vote for?
Right.
And I think that's gotta be something that's sitting there as a possibility once we get moving.
Right.
But you gotta get moving. I mean, getting moving is not gonna be easy.
It's definitely not, but I think we're moving in the right direction to show that as a committee, we're doing the right things and listening to our people. As far as cutting on costs, cutting the sales tax, cutting the size of the building. And we're moving in that right direction to show the people that we are listening and trying to work in that direction. And to satisfy those concerns. But, what other discussions that do you guys have that we want to talk about tonight?
Well, my concern is getting something put together so we can present it to the board. And we've been working on this for
A lot.
4 or 5 months,
Yeah.
and we're getting close to, we need to present something. So we need to, what we were just talking about on the 3/8 cents sales tax, that's gonna be, I think, presentable to the public. Don't you guys think?
I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the public's saying, oh, well, now it's just 3/8.
Right.
And looking at that between 25 to 30 year, I think that's what we need to decide, and then we know where we're at on that. Now, what can we build with that?
Right. And I agree with that. Charlie, correct me if I'm wrong, what's the cost to have the engineers redraft all that? It was pretty
It was to
significant, wasn't
get like the floor plan and one rendering of the outside, I think was like 10 or 12,000.
Yeah. So it's a pretty sizable cost to redo that rendering. Go ahead.
My husband's a craftsman. If I could see if he could draw something up just quick to look at. I mean, I don't know if he can, but I could ask him.
Yeah, I would say
I have that map.
giving you something to look at, absolutely. That way you guys can see it. I don't know that we have to go back to a designer per se to say, hey, this is, you gotta have it exact, this is what we're gonna have. Because by the time this gets here, that might not be the exact plan we can go with, because it, cost changes, stuff like that. So I don't wanna tell people this is what you can get out of this, and then, a year down the road, 2 years down the road, when this project can finally start, we're gonna have to shrink it. I just don't want that to happen. So, but giving you guys something to look at to say, these are the spaces we need. Yeah, I'm sure we can probably come up with that.
I think the thing that I would like to see is what would that $4.9 million look like in a building from a square footage standpoint? We have an idea what's gonna go in it, but just the overall size of it. And then Tom had a really good idea earlier. Once we kind of have that footprint, the basic idea of it, maybe try to stake it out, like in the lot that we talked about going to. So we can actually see what it would possibly space-wise take up at that location, or if there's a different location as well.
The other two things that stand out to me, it costs money to build a building. Two things, site preparation, I believe was $700 and some thousand, if I remember right. What all did that include?
Yeah.
That didn't include the pad, that didn't include, that's just to get it ready to pour and everything. That seems astronomical for no bigger place than really that is. The other one, of course, to me is the architectural engineering fees of almost $500,000, which, that's a lot of money.
Wow.
Yeah. Between those two, you've got over, $1.2 some million, which Wow.
Yeah,
So
I can't speak on it if that's good or not. I have no earthly idea. So that's out of my realm. So,
that blows your budget right there.
yeah.
I mean, I did.
What was the second one? The architect and engineering?
And engineering fees.
I don't have any
Both
of
of
those
those
stuff with me, so I'm
together.
not sure.
Those two just blow my mind of how much they are. Now, I know everything's not cheap and you're paying for expertise, but, yeah, both of those seem like a lot of money.
Is that at the $6 million figure?
Yeah, I can't even find where. You know, where it
I'll
is
get,
right
I'll
now.
get an answer for that and bring that to the
Because
next
it
meeting.
was like 900,000 to do site preparation. I mean, we're talking about the sewer system's already there, basically, close by. That land is fairly level. I know you'll need some buildup or whatever and things like that, but that's a lot of money for a little space, really.
Yeah, I'm
So
not
I don't
gonna
know
try to
all that
speak to it.
included, But,
I know we've asked the question before, but I'm not gonna try to regurgitate that information because
Right.
I'll just butcher it, but I'll get an
that'd be my
answer.
question. Those two things there, to me, are way too far out. I do like the idea of the ICF construction, insulated concrete. My brother-in-law's sister built a house down in Georgia out of that. It's amazing. And the insulation value of it, and you can pick how thick you really want those walls. They come in different sizes. It is really, really neat. And, if you want it 8 foot tall, that's fine, but if you change your mind before they get done putting those blocks up there, like my sister did, she has 10-foot ceilings. They just add more styrofoam blocks on there and it's interesting to watch
Yeah.
being built and everything too.
Yeah, I've seen some of that. It's really pretty cool.
Right. And it's concrete,
Right.
I mean, in there and reinforced and everything. So
How is that in cost comparison to regular?
Well, he was saying it was probably the cheapest way to
it's
go.
more, I mean, it's less, it's a better deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of seems almost like a no-brainer.
Yeah, thank you.
So. Let's see. And just two, so you guys, know, I've already had to give 2 updates to the Board of Aldermen. Last night was my second update, so we've tried to keep them informed as to where we are with each meeting. So I've had, outside of just our regular meetings, I don't know how many meetings I've had at City Hall, for this, in addition to the Alderman meetings I've had to get. There's been a lot of time involved in doing this for you guys. So, really, that's kind of what I've got, for tonight. So I think we kind of hit the mark pretty good. So, Shauna, anything?
Do you guys think that, I guess there's not a huge difference between 25 and 30 years when it comes to that 3/8 cent. But just your thoughts on the difference between those two.
I mean, I like the 25, just because it's a smaller number.
Mhm.
It's $500,000, or 600,000, sorry, terrible with math. Plus, I can understand the point to go to 30, but I still like 25 better.
I think we could probably put some math. I mean, I know James Estes, he's given us some updated construction cost numbers just since the time that he last put together our cost estimates. The cost of construction has increased since. So we could probably put together some figures on like what the square footage would need to be generally for the difference between the 25 years and the 30 years. So you guys could have a better understanding of a ballpark of what type of square footage we're talking with this hypothetical project costs. That might help a little bit too, just to know, like, have an image too of what you're reducing quantity wise, you know.
Was the square foot new construction cost, if I remember right, was it $420 a square foot or $450? It was in that $400.
Yeah.
$390 or
$395,
The last one I saw was actually for something like.
Yeah, it did go up,
$420.
so I think it is in the 400 now.
Yeah, that was quite a shock.
The ICF is cheaper than,
Yeah.
that's for sure. I was looking it up while we were there, but, I didn't find an exact answer, but
Yeah.
like for houses is anywhere up to 230 or something.
Yeah.
A square
Well,
foot.
the thing to keep in mind, like I said earlier, is that the building code requirements for this type of facility are different than a regular commercial building or residential. So we do have to take that into consideration, but the $400 and some a square foot, that was like, that's crazy.
But I wonder what material, because I remember when he was here, he was talking about, like, that was for that original building, not like a metal building. Kind of like the guy was talking about tonight with it, you know, we don't need that bougie of a building, but more so something like the two that he gave us. And, you know, going back to the very first meeting when I was talking about that building didn't fit Odessa, that second one down there, you know, we were talking about, it kind of fits in with the,
Mm-hmm.
It
you know,
doesn't look as harsh,
yeah.
Yeah.
you know, which I don't know if that matters to anybody really, but
It
like,
does.
just
That makes a
looks-
big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just wonder if that costs with the different material, as we've been talking, the different
Yeah.
style of building would bring that 425 down.
It definitely sounds like the ICF would.
Well, and even what, Mr. Sweeney was talking about tonight, he's, you know, talking about pulling reins back on some of that design stuff, because I mean, he's gonna build the most that he can with what he's got, so.
Right.
You know, if we can help give direction a little bit better on what we actually want versus
Yeah.
what they think we want,
Yeah.
that would probably help out a little bit as well.
For me, the biggest thing is, okay, using that 3/8 sales tax going, let's just use 25, where does that come out dollars and cents wise? Now, what's that get us square footage?
Yes.
Then we can figure out a little bit better idea what we can put in.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think part of the reason why I'm stuck on why I prefer the 25 cent is because of the other sales tax that might be coming up in this April.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm thinking that any number that we can keep lower, you know, might be more
Yeah.
enticing to people than, because what was it, 3 are coming up for voting?
Well, only one sales tax.
Only one?
Yeah. The 911.
The 911, what about the fire department? Didn't
that's a
do something?
continuation.
That's a levy.
Okay.
I don't think that's a sales tax.
No.
That's a levy.
Yeah.
The fire district.
Geo bonds.
Yeah, so that's a
Okay.
levy tax for real estate.
Yeah. So,
I can put together numbers too and just present to you what the Odessa sales tax would be if we did a 3/8, if we did the 1/4, and then if that 911 passes, if it doesn't pass, what that takes our total number to.
It's interesting to note that on the 3/8 projection here, the 25 and 50 year, there's only $515,000 difference on the building on that. But, which is not that much difference if you're, and you know, that's a 2-year, somewhere around a 2-year payback on a 5-year extension of the loan. You're only, I mean, and that's only a 5% interest rate.
So you're saying like $500,000 on an extra $500,000 adds an entire 5 years kind of thing.
It's gonna
Like
take
the
you 5
ratio of
years more.
5
But
years
you're
to
only
what you
borrowing-
get dollar wise.
You're only borrowing another $500 and some $1,000.
Yeah.
And if you're paying it at $255 a year,
Mm.
there's 2 years payments, but you're extending it, the loan 5 years.
Yeah. Well,
3
and by the
extra
time you
years.
got to the end of the loan, your payment would not be $255 anymore. It'd be greater than that.
Right.
I understand.
And hopefully by the time we get to the end of the loan, we're generating more money,
Yeah.
so.
And pay off early.
Absolutely.
Lead our
I
county.
mean, that's the goal.
Hey, Argent.
Let's all be there for the burning of that note.
I'd like to think I'll be alive for that. We'll see.
Yeah,
Time capsule, come back in 30 years.
Yeah,
30 years.
So if we've kind of pinpointed a little bit of a target for sales tax and what we feel like is palatable, we understand, that there's kind of an equation or a formula that will get us some square footage, and that will kind of determine what needs to shave off of programming within the building. I mean, what else are you guys, thinking that we need to discuss, or are there any thoughts about maybe when would be a good time to put this to the public? Or,
I'd say that has to be discussed.
Yeah.
I say, we talk about the building, we're doing everything we can there, I think, and we're doing the right things.
Yeah.
Ultimately, in my opinion, it's more about public approval.
Mhm.
The building is not, we'd have the perfect building at the perfect price, and we got people who are still gonna vote no, unless we do some things to change that. I think that, of course, the sales tax, the issues with other things going on right now for the city. I go to the Alderman meeting pretty regular, and I listen to what they're talking about, and they got a lot of stuff going on. You talk about when, is this gonna be next August? Is it gonna be November? Is it gonna be next April? I don't know if any of those look great, to be honest,
Mhm.
but it needs to be sooner than later.
right.
But ultimately, the public's gotta have to get on board somehow. We educate the public, that they've gotta understand the need. Because I talk to people and they're like, they just don't think it's necessary.
Yeah.
Now, and some of that goes back to public trust. And that goes clear back to when the original police station down here in the middle of town was tore down. There's people that still are like, what they think they're gonna do when they tore that down.
Yeah.
We're talking this over 10 years ago.
So let me ask you this, and tell me if you think this would help or not. What if we had, because the main driving force was the ambulance side of that, as far as the employee health with the mold and all that.
Mhm.
If we had like one or two of those employees come in and talk about the health issues that they've experienced and why they felt that building needed to go, would that help?
But we understand that, it's the
Right.
public.
Yeah, that's the,
How we get the public
Yeah.
in.
the key for me is, I've been in the police station down there like all of you have, and it's like, we say, this is not representative of something that,
Yeah,
they're doing as much as they can with not very much.
right,
We appreciate that.
yeah,
But the majority of the people in town that vote, they don't go see that,
right.
even though they've been invited. But they don't go see it. And have somebody come speak. I think things like that need to be done. Part of our recommendation, I think, to the Board of Aldermen, because ultimately, whatever we do here, we're gonna hand this to the board, back to the city and say, here, this is what we think would be a good direction to go with this.
Right.
I think part of that has to be what they need to do to restore some public trust.
Mhm.
I mentioned the old fire, or the old police station. There's people that every time I bring this up, they're like, have them work out of City Hall. There are people that are still, there are people who'd be mad for a long time about the fact that City Hall is where it is now, and that they bought that, and a lot of people think that was done, but
Underhanded.
Yeah.
there's one word. Just that they're not happy about it.
But let me ask you this, do you think it's some sort of a marketing campaign or PR campaign would help with that?
I think sometimes hurt.
I think you're gonna have to get community buy-in by getting other community leaders involved. I think you're gonna have to go to the businesses and get the businesses involved. You're gonna have to get local
Rotary clubs?
Yeah, local religious leaders,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to get those high-stake community members to really talk to their flocks about why this is important and show their support.
I thought about from the religious side of churches. I know there's some churches out there, just in general, they don't want to mix religion with public, as far as the public government,
With
stuff
government.
like that. So, and because I thought about that, it'd be great if we could maybe attend some of that stuff, whether it's Odessa Faith Alliance or something like that, to get those guys on board. I don't know if that will be an acceptable venue, versus like a Rotary or Optimus and stuff like that. And it's tough to reach the people like Norm was talking about, because they're very close-minded. They don't see, and a lot of us don't.
Well, I'm gonna stop this
Yeah,
because I hate for, I'm looking at the hand over there. I don't want her to say, well, he said the people are closed-minded. No, you're not saying the people are closed, but there are people for all
Right.
different reasons. I mean, historic, some are just mad because of something that happened before.
yeah,
And it's-
their
it's-
mind, what I mean
Yeah,
by
they
that
don't-
is, their mind is made up and they're not gonna.
Yes,
change
yes, I agree.
it. Yeah,
It's not that they're, I think we can change some opinions.
right,
And I think that's what is necessary ultimately.
right.
And that's what I think, one of the things we gotta say when we hand this to the Board of Aldermen, it's like, this is a big portion of this project is educating the people,
Right.
informing them, helping them to understand that, we need something besides the old shop building for the police to work out.
I would venture to say there are a lot of people in this town that don't even know where the police station is. And don't know what that building looks like, even on the outside,
Yeah,
but I'd almost bet on it,
so.
you
I think there's a lot of people that don't understand what goes into building a police station either. I think there's the mindset of, let's just throw up another building and call it good. That's fine. But they don't understand the building code behind it, or the thought process into just workflow into a police station.
I think one thing, so just sitting here from my perspective, it's challenging because what you're explaining are all things that we did. And I recognize that what was presented the first time was not palatable to the community, and maybe doing those same things again will help with a more palatable, ballot language. But it's like, how do you resolve public trust in 6 months?
I don't think you can do it in 6 months.
It's not possible.
In my opinion, I don't believe this should be put on the ballot until, say, next year. I mean, ideally, I think August would be good maybe.
Yeah.
Because you want to get it going.
Right.
But
things like going to Rotary, going to Faith Alliance, going to the chamber, we went to all of those things and I think we had 9 public meetings outside of the individual organizations that we went to.
and I'm curious how many people came to those 9 public meetings.
Nobody came to the 9 public meetings.
I've
You
been
can't
to
even
almost
round
every-
up
I've
to
been to almost every
a number.
meeting for the last 6 months, and Bruce is sitting there. Maybe he's interested, maybe because he's running. I don't know. Nobody comes to meetings.
Right.
But and not a ton of people go vote, to be real honest. If you look at the people that voted, I mean, it's not like we have an overwhelming number of people come out and vote. So you gotta work from that. The trust, I'll be honest, I sat in the Alderman meeting last night and I thought, if I'm just Joe Citizen in Odessa that says, you want me to vote for something, and I'm gonna jump right, I'm gonna give this right to you. You voted to increase your personnel by 6% pay increase. I'm thinking, okay, I got a 6% pay increase recently, so, there's things, I think maybe some of that has to come from the city and the Board of Aldermen showing, hey, we're gonna make some cuts. I know when I was working at Crestridge at the school district down there, I mean, we got in this tough spot, we had to cut people. We cut people, that's the fastest way to save money. We cut people, and for a few years it was tough, and so I think you're right. It's very difficult to rebuild trust. That takes time, and you're never going to get it back from everybody.
I
But
think
some
we
things
need-
like that might and I'm not saying people don't deserve the 6%, I don't know, but I'm just saying, I don't know, people are gonna read that in the paper, that we got a 6% increase in salary, or something. Some people will be thinking, well, they deserve it, and other people thinking, that seems like a lot.
Mhm.
I think we make the alderman a volunteer position. I know there's talk of them getting a raise. I don't agree with that for what it is, but go ahead.
So, a prime opportunity, I think, to go along with this, get the information out there and everything is, excuse me, I'm from another town originally, so I've only lived here 8 years. Puddle jumper days. Prime place to inform people. Now, I can't remember exactly when that is. Is it August?
August.
The first week of August. And if you did put it on the ballot in August, it's gonna be what, the next week or the week after that, that way they'd be voting on it. But that's a prime opportunity there to show people what we have and what we need. And, information booth or whatever, and need to show the public, right before a vote on there.
We had that at last year's puddle jumpers as well.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I was there, but I didn't see it. Where was it?
At the police booth.
Yeah, what about, doing like some digital ads? You know how you go on the internet or you're watching YouTube and ads will pop up? Doing something like that.
Well, I had suggested originally we get the Odessa High School to go make a video that could be posted on the website of the police station. To really, because I know that originally when this came out, there was the come see it, You don't got time for that, y'all. Like, you work a busy life. I work in the city. That's an hour drive back. By the time it's 6 o'clock, I want to eat dinner.
Right.
So unless you're going to do a bunch of stuff on Saturday, let's get some bounce houses. We got a giant field. Invite the kids out, come hang out with the cop and see the police station.
Karen loves bounce houses.
Seriously, do it something for, I think the city needs to give back to the city.
So
Yeah.
there's what's called National Night Out, which is a really great thing. How many people do you think came to that last year?
There was quite a few, but it would be better if that was held at the police station.
Right.
Seriously, get the fire trucks out there, let the kids come set cop collars,
That's what we do for National Night Out, but it's at Dyer Park, so.
Yeah.
You could do your own whole event. Seriously, get some of
I
the
think
local businesses.
any opportunity to get people
Yeah,
to the police station as it is right now is gonna be a very,
I agree.
that's gonna pay dividends potentially.
I agree.
And we could be there to talk to people if they have questions or suggestions.
I think one area too is our older generations. My mom's in the nursing home over there, and she thinks building a new police station is crazy. But everybody else in that facility thinks the same way. Because they all sit there and all they have to do is talk to each other. So they come up with all these great ideas. But we aren't really marketing to those people from a campaign standpoint. Potentially the same thing with the senior apartments, but I mentioned the nursing home because they have their own push to make sure everybody gets the opportunity to vote. And they definitely get excited about voting over there. So maybe we also make sure that population has a focus.
I do believe Josh.
Crafts fair going on.
Yeah, I think he did talk to them.
Do what?
You could have a little crafts fair at the bounce house again, get some vendors out. Invite them. We need to be purposeful on who you're inviting.
Right.
So invite the nursing homes. They like to get out and schmooze with the community and rub elbows. Yeah. So
A lot of them though aren't very
It's hard for some
mobile.
of them to get out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
'cause the vast majority of them are in wheelchairs and that kind of.
y'all are preaching to the choir. This is fun. Have you ever tried to get around in this community with someone in a wheelchair?
I used to be on the board of directors for Spotted Lincoln.
Yeah, you're not getting around this community.
You will after the sidewalks are done.
I know, I'm really excited about it. But we really need to be intentional about who we're inviting. And, instead of saying it's hard for them to get there, let's figure out a way to get them.
Or go
involved.
to the,
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta
do
do
it.
it.
presentation.
Yeah, do a grill out in the parking lot. I got a grill out, loaded up my truck, let's go.
Yeah.
Get some hot dogs.
Yeah. You know, it's too bad the senior center's not hosting lunch anymore either. 'Cause that's a great place to do it too. They're just really struggling right now, sadly. So we've got some good ideas from a marketing standpoint that I think we can run with. All you gotta have is money to pay for it. I think there may be some potential there. If we don't do a total redesign of the building from the engineer, we might be able to save some money to put that towards a marketing campaign for the city. But it's something we'd have to work with City Hall on and everybody come together with, make sure we're on the same page. I'd really like to be able to kind of give our final recommendation to the Board of Aldermen in April. Is what I'd like to shoot for, first part of April. I think that's pretty reasonable. What do you guys think?
I think so.
I really think by nailing down that three sales tax in the year that we look at, that really puts us several steps forward in our purpose anyway. So because once we know the size of the building from a cost standpoint, then we can truly say, here you go. Here's our recommendations or what we see from what amenities can go in it. And then they'll really have the final decision on that anyway.
So we have our next meeting is on March 4th for the tour of Oak Grove. And then the next in-person meeting's March 13th. I mean, as far as I know, we don't have presenters or anything booked for the 13th. Is there a need for additional meetings after the 13th? Honest question.
I don't think there is, but would you guys like to have like one of the ambulance people come and talk to us about the old station and the health side of it? I don't see where it wouldn't hurt. Maybe have Angela speak. Maybe 15, 20 minutes, something like that.
That's up to you guys.
I mean, I don't necessarily think it's relevant to what we're doing. I think that's getting stuck in the past.
Yeah.
And we need to be moving past that and into the future. Because I mean, I understand the effects of black mold, but like I think the more we talk about it, the more it's just gonna open up a fresh wound.
Right.
True.
You know, so I think like
And that's fair.
being more in the present of, we understand why this was a pain point. We, reflect how can we heal these wounds and move forward. And so,
Right. Yeah. I want to try to make sure that we're answering a lot of that opposition that we get. Well, they don't need a new station, or why can't the old Casey's do as a new station? Marlon, it seems like you're hearing more
I've heard the old
opposition.
Casey's.
I've heard that.
Okay.
Yeah. What's that? Yeah. But I
That's
still,
cool stuff.
People upset.
yeah.
Well, they're happy with the pole barn being thrown out, so.
The what?
They built a pole barn.
Yeah.
Barn for.
Yeah, I mean, I've had people tell me.
Yeah.
For what?
Can they
Just
just build
pitch
a
a
pole
big
barn?
tent.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying they were upset about an already built pole barn. I was confused.
Just build a pole barn.
And I've heard that too.
I mean, I'm like, no, you can't just do that, that's not,
Yeah,
then I have to explain.
yeah.
Well, I think Todd Sweeney's explanation today about, what do you want standing at the end of a tornado? That's a pretty good
Yeah.
response to that concern.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, a tornado went through there.
I think the other thing that we kind of have a consensus on too, and we had this at the last meeting, but since we have more people here, are we pretty much in consensus, new construction's the way to go versus a remodel?
Yes.
There's nothing viable.
Yeah.
It needs to be.
We have to purchase.
Yeah, so, one kind of last topic there, location. I mean, any suggestions outside of what we've been talking about?
I don't think there's really any place in town that's.
I don't either.
The other place we could put it is over where our dumpsters are right now.
And is that big enough?
It's a pretty big space, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, because Public
So-
Works, from what I understand, has some almost immediate needs over there from a construction standpoint.
Well, they do, yeah.
So,
I think if we agree on square footage of, I'm just saying 6,000 square feet, and we go over to what we're calling the north field across from the post office and just stake out as 6,000 square foot. So all of us can look at that, the Board of Aldermen can look at that, and we can see if we go to the east, how we can expand to the west.
Yeah.
I think everybody would get a good visual on that.
yeah. I think 6,000 square feet right now is reasonable to use from just kind of a base point. Shauna, is that something that the city could do? Maybe figure out a 6,000 square foot square? Stake it out, and it also allow the citizens who are driving by to be able to see or have some sort of a visualization. Exactly, that's very true. Yeah.
We're at 6,000 square feet.
Do we need, I think we should probably plug the numbers into the current construction costs and see if 6,000 is feasible or not, because I don't know if
Yeah.
6,000 square foot costs would generally cost 5 million or 6 million, or if it's in the 4 million range.
Right, and that's gonna determine, be determined by what construction you use.
True.
Can we see, what the square footage cost would be for the ICF?
Yep.
And maybe try to base it off the ICF construction? So,
Just rough numbers. If it was 6,000 square feet, it was $425 square foot. It's 2.5.
okay,
Wait, say that again?
If it's 6,000 square feet, it's $425 square foot. It's 2.5. That's just the
Right.
building. That's
Okay.
nothing,
Right, that's nothing.
nothing in it,
yeah.
no equipment, nothing. It's
Well, we'll
just-
bring those either to, I don't know if we'll have them for the Tuesday meeting or not, but Josh can run those numbers for us.
But let me ask you guys this, in one of the handouts I saw there, there was I think it was this, what's it, 6,000 square foot / 8,000?
I think he was saying 6,000 of program space and then
Yeah.
8,000 with like your hallways and
Right.
Yeah.
unusable
So
space.
what if we did, or see if the 8,000 fits within those numbers and staked out an 8,000 square foot building? And if we gotta go smaller, we go smaller, but that gives us a pretty good base idea of what we're looking at. Cause if we knock 2,000 square feet off of that, we're not taking a whole lot of room out of that from a square standpoint.
Yeah, we'll put some stuff together and present it to you guys at the next one, and then I think we look into staking it out once we can kind of more visually understand what the square footage is,
Yeah.
with soft costs and everything included.
So with that, do we still wanna do the Oak Grove tour? Do you guys still see merit for that?
I don't know if it's necessarily needed. I mean, we've seen,
Yeah,
I had initially asked for it, but because of all the rescheduling and everything, I'm not gonna be able to go.
so I think we just go ahead and cancel that. Are you guys okay with that?
I agree.
So, Shauna, can you help pass
Yep.
that along?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way that we could, I don't know, Sean, put it on Facebook or anywhere where we could get any public comment or at least open it up for public ideas somewhere?
You go first.
That way we can.
Comment what?
Public comment. Trying to get, I wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
we're getting public feedback.
Well, they could do that on Facebook.
To have
Certainly.
Yeah.
That's what I did say, I think you.
I missed what you said, Seth.
Be up in front of others, asking questions, that model rather than a float in and out meeting. I think there's a lot of people who are in that group that Mr. Dyer was talking about that are angry about things of the past, that want the chance to just kind of almost confront the issue. And I think that ability to get up in front of a crowd and just say those frustrations can be cathartic to them.
Oh, you're probably right.
So,
It's kind of scary, but it's probably
Kind
right.
of scary, but
But it might be.
I just feel like we need to know what the public's thinking before, at some point, so that way they can like they got their.
and I get that, the one thing I'm a little gun shy at with it is, I'm not a big social media person. But I saw something, it may have been on the Odessa page or somewhere, when our committee started. And after that first meeting, where the person just kept knocking and knocking and knocking, going, I want to know why so-and-so was arrested on this date. Or why hasn't anything been done on this crime? We don't want to open it up to that. And that's what I saw happening when we first started our
But
committee.
I get that, but we also need to be conscious of people's time and their availability, and we need to make sure that it's open. Because technology, whether we like it or not, it's how people have access. So like, I don't know if there's a way for like, there to be like a way, I'm just thinking some way that people can provide feedback or ideas or suggestions or what they don't like.
So what about Hannah's idea? You wanna explain to me?
so something that I think could be in a way healing for people is to do almost like a Q&A night with you guys, where they're able to come, sit in the audience, and in front of that audience, ask their questions and hear answers. I think that's something that was missing the first time around, that people were expecting. When a couple people, not many, I know, went to some of those public meetings, they were expecting that chance for it to be more of an audience situation, and again, a chance to essentially confront and voice their frustrations that they have.
But do we want it to be just pertinent to the?
Yeah, you gotta have
Yeah.
rules.
Yeah,
Time limits,
yeah.
keep on task, direct anything off
Firing
topic to
squad.
other people.
How much of a
Firing
nightmare
squad.
would it be to get those people wanting to snuck in, if you will?
Huh?
And start getting on those comments and be like, hey, look, this isn't the venue for that, you need to move on.
That's not what we're here for.
Right.
That's
And I'll be honest, I do stuff like that, so.
That's why you have. Do you,
What's that?
Do you think that these things, I mean, they were.
They don't use
But I think that would be a show of transparency and a very forward action by you all as a committee to take questions
Yeah.
and answer them.
I'm open to it as long as people show up. So-
And maybe they won't, that is honestly be
Sure.
fine.
I know.
Or what if we did it at like the nursing home or senior apartments or something like that?
Yeah, that's my guess.
Well, I don't want a confrontational
I don't either.
over there
No,
at a nursing home. I would
no.
rather leave it,
Yeah.
something probably here. And then we can kind of, if it
And we
gets
have a
too out of
lot-
hand, we can get.
Yeah. But there's a lot of avenues to go and a lot of options that, we've obviously learned some lessons from the last time around, so I think we'll make good progress, and with your guys' help, we'll be good. We'll come up with some good stuff.
So what if we did this on that front? We kind of get our consensus of what we're gonna do, which we already kind of have from the sales tax standpoint, and all that. We present it to the Board of Aldermen, but we work with the Board of Aldermen and the City Hall staff on that open discussion, to where we make ourselves available on X date to answer those, whether it's before or after, when we make that final presentation to the board. Because the impression that I'm getting is that they would really love to have our assistance in helping answer those questions beyond our regular committee meetings when it comes time to put it to the vote. That way we can kind of pick their brains of, they've already been down that road and see what actually did work for them, and kind of know what didn't work for them. And just work with them to formulate a new plan. Or even their marketing folks on that side of it. So I like the idea of involving the high school, because that gets ownership from their standpoint, maybe even the parents. They can,
I think they're fun.
yeah, I'm very open to that.
Do you all want to, still meet, I guess, will our next meeting then be on the 13th
Yeah.
for canceling the Oak Grove? So we have,
Just cancel next week.
yeah, let's do that. And then, we have a meeting scheduled for the 25th as well, if that's needed, so,
Well, we can wait and see how the 13th goes.
Yeah,
yeah, if it's needed.
yeah, I really think we make good progress tonight. Tom, do you have a question?
Yeah.
You look like you're ready to say something. Ready to roll? All right. Everybody ready to adjourn? All right. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for doing that.